Hello, and welcome to the Sovereign Collective podcast, where we bring you real, raw truth for your self-empowerment. I'm your host, Sasha Calavoda, and I believe that you can stand on your own 2 feet, but that you don't have to do it alone. I love learning from people who continually strive to raise the bar, to go against mainstream thinking, and who dare to question the general consensus. People who risk being ridiculed or even risk the loss of their professional status as they bravely question the common narratives and challenge the rest of us to expand our minds and to reconsider what we think we already know. Join me in learning how to take control of your health and your mind so that you can have the energy to think more clearly and the confidence to step up and take responsibility for all aspects of your life. We promise to never censor here because I believe you are strong enough to hear the real, raw truth to make up your own mind. If you like what you find here at the Sovereign Collective podcast, then please share with your friends and family. I so appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. And now, on to the show. Hey everyone, Sasha here for another interview for the Sovereign Collective podcast, and I am stoked today. I'm with Matt Ros of Cultivate Elev, and he is helping you, as I say in the intro to this podcast, unlearn the things that you think you already know. And I think that is one of the most important things to embrace these days in this world of upside down world, right? Misinformation all over the place, which is what this is being broadcast as in some respects, right? This is misinformation, but you get to be the judge of that. So anyways, Matt is the founder of Cultivate Elev, which I believe was born ultimately after a journey of trying to figure out, why am I sick? What's the truth out there with our food? And then uncovering some really amazing, time-tested, proven herbal tonics, or just tonic herbs in general in the Eastern traditions and other traditions, like pearl powder, like medicinal mushrooms, like shilajit. So many great things that have truly been proven safe and effective over long periods of time, of clearly causing no harm and actually causing a lot of benefit to a lot of people, unlike other things that are being recommended these days. So Matt has his website, Cultivate Elev. He is on Instagram, he's on Rumble, he's on Telegram, one of the places that I like to catch him. Unfortunately, I always miss you live, but on Telegram, YouTube, of course, but we're both familiar with the censorship around that, so probably not the best avenue there. And we'll talk about what his offerings a little bit later. But just so you know, I have a discount code for you, Sasha10, to get 10% off at Cultivate Elev off of some amazing products. And note, my name is spelled SASCHASNC. You're both in there. Sasha10 for your discount code. So Matt, thanks for joining me today. I'm super stoked to have you here. And before we get into all the interesting stuff that I know we're going to talk about, just tell me when did Cultivate Elev become? Because I found you when the whole shit show, as I call it, started. And just so you know, I have had shilajit this morning. I put pearl powder in my morning elixir. I got my copper water bottle. I'm wearing organic brawn underwear, and I'm covered from head to toe in linen, just so you know. So I'm all prepped for the interview today. Ha ha.
I like it. I like it. And that's the thing, is like, those are just little changes. That's what I started to realize. When you make little changes, the body begins to heal. And there's a lot of things, like you just mentioned, even just clothing, this has frequency. Everything that you eat has frequency. Everything that you listen to has frequency. Everything that you're bringing in or consenting to every single day. So it's so important for people to be aware of every single thing that they're doing, and what are they actually consenting to? Are they wearing plastic clothes? Are they bringing in GMOs and pesticides? Are they bringing in these things, toxic water into their body, which is lowering their red blood cell count? All these different things play a factor. And the beginning of 2020 was when all the nonsense began, when they began lying to the people and everything else. But that was actually the beginning of Cultivate Elev. And it started with one product, which was lion's mane. And it was me going down a bunch of rabbit holes of understanding how well lion's mane can heal the brain. And a lot of people suffer from, dementia, Alzheimer's, memory loss, the forgetfulness. And lion's mane can actually be a great solution. And I started doing all this testing. And then before that, I was testing different mushrooms like cordyceps and all these different things to see how they feel on my body when I would work out, because I was in the fitness world. I was in the fitness world, and I watched people do crazy feats of strength, 1,000-pound squats, 1,000-pound deadlifts, all kinds of things. And in between the fitness world and Cultivate Elev, I went down all these rabbit holes, and I started just going through things and trying to, see things and see the other side. And then now that's all accumulated into 2020, and now has just accelerated since then. Because once I find something, I try to find the other side of it. And then now the information has just changed over time to 2024. And I think when anything in which we're presented to, even all this information we present in this podcast today, people should just look it up and look up both sides and take the judgment that you feel from that, because that's what I've done. I started to look at things related to copper, like you talked about, and they were saying that copper was toxic. This is what Google always promotes. But then people with copper pipes are living to 100, have no gray hairs, and have a great memory. So then I thought, well, then how is the copper toxic if they have copper pipes in their home? And then you go back to copper pipes, which is going back all the way to the 1850s, of everybody having copper pipes. And you start to sit there and think, well, then when did it become toxic? Well, it started to become toxic when they started putting chemicals in the water supply. So you see how there's always this bait and switch where they tell you one thing, but they don't tell you the whole story. And then they miss this part, which is the most crucial part. And then you sit there and take that at face value. And what I've started to learn through Cultivate Elevate is seeing one thing and then going, well, let me see it from my side and see it from another and test it. Let me see how I feel. And that's what I've done through this whole journey of Cultivate Elevate for the last about 3.5 years.
That's amazing. What a success it's been for you. So those are some serious rabbit holes if you were just starting that just before 2020, because 2020 serves me so well too, because I've been on this path for 30 plus years, but the depth of the lies was unknown to me until 4 years ago with the historical record, the contagion, all that stuff. I mean, I've been aware for a long time, question everything, but holy cow. So for you to explode like that in that a short amount of time, to me, that's intelligent. It's just, you see something, it makes sense. You test it out and you change your mind. But so many people are just grasping to the ideas that they have always clung to, which doesn't make sense to me.
Well, and that's the thing is, the simple one is just go back and watch the moon landing. Go onto YouTube and go watch the moon landing and tell me that footage is real. Tell me he's not jumping on a trampoline and he's covered in aluminum foil. Like, you sit there and go, he's protected. If you were allegedly going up to space and whatever else, well, you would think you'd have a better suit, like just based on whatever we've been told, and it's colder when you go up there and whatever else. So that's the thing is I just started going back and going, this doesn't make a lot of sense. Even when I started getting into radium and uranium and all these different things, and I started looking at the radium girls, and I started looking at these stories that didn't make a lot of sense because I saw radium fireplaces, which are fireplaces which can just heat your whole home and keep you warm for eternity. So then I thought, well, if you tell people to stay away from that, then they never get to see the other side. And that's what I've started to realize is you have to go back. Anything that you were told, or you have like almost like a song put into your head with it, anything like that, go back and look at that and then go, maybe this doesn't make a lot of sense. And like you said with contagion, when that whole thing started happening and they started telling people to stand on stickers and put, plastic barriers, which are now in the ocean and everything else up and whatever else, I started going, what? Like yesterday, I didn't have to do this, because I'll never forget. I walked into Whole Foods and they're like, today we're asking you. And I was like, yeah, but yesterday you didn't.
Right.
And they're like, well, you just need to cover something.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, how does that do anything? And everything started falling apart. And I went through Kaufman and Alexek and the empty hospitals and the whole thing and Cowan's work and everything else. And I go, oh, okay, I got you. I'm being duped. So when we look at all the information in which we're presented, because we get so much every single day, a lot of the times spending a lot of time in nature can help you really kind of sift through a lot of the stuff because you're grounded. A lot of times when we're put into this frantic state, we take these things at face value, but we need to be grounded to see through it. And so what I've done is go back and look at it, go through it and say, who's telling me and are they paid? Because whenever I see money involved too, then I'm like, oh, big red flag. You're paid to tell me this. So it's a lot of discernment over time, but it's been, like you said, accelerated at such a level that I can't even fathom. Because I feel like the last 4 years have been like 100 years compared to everything else before that.
Right. I get that. And that following who benefits, right, from that, because the information that you give, the information that I give on this podcast, the information when it's to empower the person without dependence on anybody else. Ultimately, like, yeah, we can reach on and lean on each other. But when you look at the fear and it's all about fear and lack. This is an abundant universe. This is an abundant realm, right? We have the fear and we have the lack, and those are the two big things, and that's how you easily control people. So I want to start with copper, because this is where, with the whole big crazy electroculture explosion, I want to talk about copper because I put it in my garden last year. I have to say, this year my garden is pretty sucky. I'm really sad, but last year was really good. So I don't know what happened there, but let's talk about the benefits of copper. Wearing copper, drinking out of copper. Can you put things in your water inside of copper, or is that going to cause a problem? What does it do in the garden? What is it with copper? So I've had Morley Robbins on the podcast 4 times now, talking about internal copper, right? And what copper's doing, because there's a huge big psyop around the copper being a problem internally as well. So let's talk all things copper first. And then I want to get into the lead and the mercury and the radium and all this stuff, because all these things from the periodic table, they've been weaponized against us almost, right? So
yes, they're to keep you away. They're to keep you on the DuPont plastic and lots of iron, iron, gunking up your body. But when you get into copper, it's a very fascinating one. Back in the day, they used to wrap people's wrist with copper. They would actually weld the bracelet onto the hand so that it would get rid of inflammation. And this was actually done in the South. They would just weld it so it would permanently stay on there. And then that person would never have inflammation. It also helps with brain fog. All of your connective tissues require copper. Every function in your body requires copper. So if you think about necklaces, if you think about earrings, if you think about anklets or any type of, jewels that people would wear, you're just enhancing the meridian lines with materials such as copper, silver, gold, brass. Those are all conductive materials. So if you think about it, if you're placing a conductive material around this area, you're enhancing that meridian line. And these meridian lines determine your health. So same with necklaces. You think of people with gold chains, lots of usually large gold chains. That gold is also helping the conductive properties of the neck into the head and the heart. But copper goes back. Everybody had copper pipes. You get into copper and gardening, like we just talked about with electroculture. It enhances the soil, enhances the conductivity of the soil, and allows the plants to grow faster, which is this is Victor Schauberger's work, Justin Christoflo, George Lakhovsky, all these people who tapped into copper, understood copper. Tesla, of all people, Nikola Tesla was big on copper, all types of copper domes and rods and things like that. But what you're doing is you're tapping into this metal that we used to be connected to. Everything got switched from iron, and now everything used to be copper and brass and tin and silver. Everybody used to eat from silver as well, another conductive material. Silver spoon in the mouth. But, we had all these conductive materials, and now we're eating with all these things that don't conduct and don't have energy. You get into the iron and the plastic. So copper, when you get into this, it's a very interesting one. And I started going down all these rabbit holes because Google was telling me that copper was toxic. And if I drink out of my copper water bottle, I'm not going to be here and whatever else. Then I started going down the rabbit hole of there's 25 million Americans with copper pipes. So then I started thinking, well, if 25 million Americans have copper pipes, wouldn't they have all been gone by now? Like if the copper was as toxic as we were told. Then I started getting into cookware, and I started seeing copper and tin all over the place. You go to the Middle East, you go to Europe, you go to different parts of America, you go to Southern America, you go to Australia. They were using copper and tin and cooking with these things. So then you start to sit there and think, well, if it's as toxic as we were told, why would everybody cook their food with it? And they're putting a fire on it. Like they're really putting a fire on this while they're using it. So when you get into that, that kind of started to make me realize, well, somebody's lying. And who is it? And a lot of this traced back to DuPont. Because DuPont has such a large plastic and Teflon business, which we know what Teflon does, poisons the body. But because it's such a large business, and they also were the ones who got hemp banned as well. But because it's such a large business, as the copper and all of these things kind of faded, they took the place. And they monopolized all the different types of materials in which people were cooking with, telling people they should use Teflon, all these weird pans, which are just emitting toxins. But everything slowly went away. And with World War I in World War II, which acted like resets for the information which was on our realm, more people started to forget because as the new babies are born and brought into this realm, they don't know about this. They're like, I don't know about copper. But it's interesting because as I've gone down this rabbit hole, I've had people reach out and say, my family members, like my great grandma or whatever, still have copper cups, still have copper pans. Even a lot of them still have silverware, and all of these different materials. And they're like, I always just thought my grandma was collecting this for fun. But then you start to think about the energy principle of these materials and how everything energy wise comes from copper. And you start to see the connection. We are electrical beings. Our whole body is one big electrical
Yes.
being. So if you don't have conductivity, you're not alive.
Right.
And a perfect example is when you pass out, they shock you back to life. They use electricity to bring you back to life. So we are conductive beings. And if we don't bring in the conductive materials or use them in our daily regimens and things, we begin to fall apart. And so when drinking out of copper, I just put water in here. I just keep it nice and simple. I have tested all different types of things. I've actually put pearl powder in here and it gets very, very charged. It's a very fascinating experiment.
And
That's
so
for
how do
sure.
you know that? How does it get charged? How do you measure that?
So I've measured it by how I feel.
Okay.
It's pretty wild. And I think personally because okay, so we can't see everything. This goes into like the work of Valerie Hunt, Infinite Mind. She talks about the aura and the essence. We can't see everything that's going on in here, but certain things that you do place into copper will be enhanced by the copper. And I've seen this, and maybe that's because the absorption that's coming in or the copper is turning it on, almost kind of like Ormus. Ormus can turn things on as well. So when you put a little pearl in here, it's very charged. You will be charged for the entire day. But I just put water in here for the most part. Every so often I'll throw some pearl. But when I clean it, I just keep a little linen and I just wipe it down with some linen. And then I just use a little distilled water and just wipe it down. And that's pretty much the simple parts of copper. But when you go into, for example, you go into areas of the Middle East, they do different coffees in copper, and all these different types of materials to have coffee. But you can have fun with it. Try it out. I always say go to a vintage store or a thrift store, find some old copper, like the original copper and things like that, because a lot of sometimes the new stuff isn't pure
That's what
copper.
I'm wondering. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had people have their copper turn black, and I'm like, that's not supposed to happen unless it's iron or steel or something else, or like nickel or something. So, you should be aware of what you're buying. The easiest way sometimes to test copper, if we're going to go on that level too, is you can get yourself a magnet. This is a lodestone, so this is a magnetic stone, and you could place it next to the copper or a magnet as well. You can place it next to the copper and it almost repel itself. It almost like you don't want to put it, you almost won't be able to put it next to it. Now, if it sticks, it's iron or steel. So sometimes some of these things you're like, oh, I bought copper. And this happened. I bought a bowl and it was copper. And I was like, wow, take a magnet, it sticks right to it. And I go, oh my gosh, it's just iron, coated with copper.
Right.
So, going to the thrift store, you can get yourself a magnet and you can go around and search them, but you'll see that it repels. And the most coolest thing was when I was getting into copper, they were showing all these experiments where they would drop a magnet through the copper, like through the copper tunnel, and the magnet would slow down.
Oh, cool.
So then you start to think, well, if you think about repelling and everything that's going on in your body, with all the nonsense they try to put into us and toxins and whatever, copper helps to repel and expel all of that out of the body. This is why sometimes people have almost like a detox phase where it will cleanse their system. Because if you're bringing GMOs and pesticides into the body, copper will pull it all out because it doesn't want that to stay. And that's what I started to learn. The body is beautiful. It's designed so well to just fix whatever nonsense that we're doing to it. And then once we start to pick up on those things, we can then heal, regenerate, and repair.
Right. Absolutely. I have humic and fulvic acids in here. I always add that to my water, and I'm just wondering if that's a good thing to mix in there. I'm thinking it should be okay.
How do you feel is the question. Do you feel anything?
I just prefer my water to be like that. I should probably have a day where I just drink it out of one and drink it out of the other and compare the two and see, but I don't feel bad. I feel
Well, that's usually, that's why I ask, because usually you can tell instantaneously. If you put the
right.
wrong thing into something, then thing will, you know, anything you place into it is also alchemy. You know, anything you place into your
Mm,
water is alchemy. So if you put
mhm.
something into there that doesn't go well with copper, it will also tell you, you know, you might feel a little nauseous or whatever it may be. So that's what I've started to realize. We got to pick up on our body and go with how we feel, you know, and start to pay attention to everything that we're consuming, eating, drinking, and go with our response almost like a muscle test, you know, with our response to see what works well with us and what doesn't work well with others.
Right. And it all makes sense because it's all frequency, right? And there's all this, let's say, negative frequencies being passed to us. So there's obviously a way to counteract that within our own abilities, right? Because everything is frequency. So it makes total sense. So you talk about, so one thing I love talking about with that, listening to you talking about is all the historical stuff and the buildings and the antennas and blah, blah, blah. And I've listened to the other stuff with mud floods and, you know, energy generation, all that. So copper used to be part of antennas, did they not? Like the coppers and mercury? Is that
Yes. So
true?
you have multiple different materials which used to take place with these weather vanes. That's what they were called. The
Right.
old weather vanes or
Yeah.
lightning rods, which is funny because if you think about it, a lot of these buildings had thousands of lightning rods on top of them. And if you think of if you were trying to protect yourself from lightning with wooden roofs, you know, you would think, why would you put a conductive material which
Yeah.
could bring the lightning to you? You know, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And if you look at the old weather vanes, 1893, they were all made out of copper. And you see they're just beautiful designs of copper, and then you see a little brass, and you see some gold and silver, and then mercury as well, which we'll touch on. But with all of these antennas, they're tapping into Herman Plausen. Herman Plausen had patents for atmospheric energy. He would send balloons up into the sky that were made out of tin, and he would notice that he would get all this voltage, free electricity. And he said,
Mm.
why don't we use this? Because helium is practically free and helium can be used with radium and all of these things. But he said, why don't we do this? We just send a balloon up, you got voltage, you got power for your house. Now, if you think of all these antennas, if you connected them to a battery, an earth battery, the earth battery would charge the entire time. The copper would run up to the antenna, and you would be able to provide each location with free energy. And this was all with the work of Nathan B. Stubblefield. He designed earth batteries. He understood that you could capture this energy. And when you get into these antennas, which were on top of the house, that's what they were doing. The other interesting thing when I was going into the research on weather vanes was there was a fellow who said that they put these lightning rods on top of houses to discharge the static so that they did not get hit by lightning. So then it starts to bring into a whole nother thing of, wait a minute. So the materials in which are being used in my house are building up static, and then that is why the house gets hit by lightning. So if you think about it, it's kind of like when people are living in mobile homes. They were saying that mobile homes, the aluminum actually attracts a tornado.
Mm.
You think of places that get hit. Like it's interesting. There's certain materials. That's why that's why I wanted to use that example. Certain materials which are doing certain things in our realm, and copper is one of them. Aluminum is another, which is a byproduct and things like that. But when you get into the whole thing with weather vanes, you see that the lightning rod thing doesn't really make a lot of sense. And then you would start to see these antennas on top of a lot of the cathedrals that have spires. You know, they have these spires and these balls that are attached to them. And usually what that ball would be is that ball could be iron on the inside to hold the mercury, because mercury will eat things. It's a living substance. It's just like water. And if you place things around mercury, like other materials other than iron, it'll actually eat it. It'll just grab it and take it up. So if you take, for example, you have a lightning rod, you have an iron core, you have mercury in the inside, and then you have brass on the outside, and there's any type of spin or vibration that takes place, such as a pipe organ or a bell, and that mercury begins to spin in that ball, you start to generate electricity. And I've actually tested it. I bought a vial of mercury and I got a voltmeter. I spun the mercury just like this with my hand, nothing crazy, in front of the voltmeter, and I started getting voltage. So then I thought, okay, now you have an antenna, which is massive compared to my little hand, you know, and everything else. And if you had a large amount of this and any spin that takes place, You could have free energy right off your roof just based on using sound and just materials. And to take this a step further with Mercury, you look at the pyramids and they have pools of mercury underneath. You can just type in Google
Oh, they do.
Mercury, Mercury
Oh,
underneath the pyramids. And then you start to wonder, okay, well, if you had, I don't know, 100,000 gallons of mercury and that begins to spin because there's always a spin taking place, think of the voltage which would take place. And that's what made me kind of rethink Mercury retrograde, which is when the Mercury that is in the earth is beginning to spin back the opposite way. Because
oh,
a lot of the mercury is found below us. And if you connect that, you have a different spin. And then when you think about everybody's electronics, remember they always say, like, oh, the electronics are all messed up. It's Mercury retrograde. I'm not feeling myself. It's Mercury retrograde. Well, if everything's spinning back the opposite way, then it distorts the realm. And then you'd start to have all these like issues and chaos and whatever else. So Mercury is a fascinating one, and we're just told to stay away from it. This is just another one. Keep your distance. Don't go explore. And it's interesting because the original electric vehicles of the 1880s, they used mercury for them. So if you think about it, you tell somebody to stay away from things because they compete with a system that's owned by the Rockefellers, which is all about oil, petroleum, and their electrical, system and grid. And when people start experimenting with red mercury and all these different types of mercuries, then they start seeing things that don't make a lot of sense. And when you get into flying saucers and that whole thing with Victor Schauberger and his whole situation, you get into mercury. And as mercury spins, it can also create levitation. And you get into devices in which can levitate. So I've started to realize certain things, like when we start with copper, then we move to mercury, then we move to radium and all these things. We've been told to stay away from a lot of them because they compete with the current system. It would allow people to experiment with certain things and go, wait a minute, what do you mean this creates voltage? I thought I have to go to the power plant. And it allows people to get into their independence. Now, when you get into mercury, they do put into the injections, they do put mercury into that stuff when they're trying to give people
and your
boost.
teeth.
Yep, and
Yeah.
into the teeth and things like that. But remember, those are mixed with other things as well. So the mercury will either go in the body and start eating things in the body because it's past the blood-brain barrier, or if it's in the teeth, it can actually pick up on the Wi-Fi frequencies and the radio frequencies that are out there because it's a mixture of all these things. And that's why people start having issues because they have this, implanted into their mouth and it's mixed with all these other additional metals, especially aluminum and especially nickel and all of these things. And then it's sitting in their mouth. So that's why I say, like, when you look at these things, it's all depending on how the form and like if someone's, touching it or injecting it or all of these things, that's the part that's always missing. Because I've watched videos of people playing in pools of mercury and the
Right.
guys literally just showering it in India. They just shower in it because they believe that it goes back to the Vedics and it goes back to the Vedic gods and understanding free energy. So, a lot of things don't make sense. And that's why these are just things to question and ask. But when you get into Mercury, it's tied to free energy and it's tied to the things in which we're not learning about because when you think about the current system, how can you find free energy if you use a system which is already broken? You can't
No.
because the fact that the system is trying to make you pay for it. Why would you be able to use that system? You need a different system, which was what Nikola Tesla was all about, and his studies of understanding different parts connected into the ether. And most people don't know that everything related to the ether was taking off the periodic table in 1908. So when we talk about elements, like you just said, and talking about the periodic table has been changed. Things have been removed to keep it at the certain elements in which we are supposed to be taught. But there's a lot of things which have been removed, which connect us to the free energy element of the realm, which is what all these old world buildings, old cities, and everything was tapping into. They weren't using cars with 20 miles to the gallon. They understood frequency, energy, and wavelength, sound, and light.
Right. And how old do you think? Like, I'm so confused. I follow Jason Bashir's and the fact that we're in, a simulation, and then there's just then these traditional resets, or there's like how old do you think this has been around for? Because clearly, I mean, we live in a world where people lived in sod houses, and you know, they suffered in these really harsh conditions, especially in this part of the world where the winters are harsh. Like, when did this come from, and where do you think this originated? Who did this technology? Who created it?
So, I mean, you get into like giants. There used to be giants all over America. My buddy, the archivist with an analog, went into this. He showed old newspaper articles of all the giants and all the articles which have been shipped over to the Smithsonian Institute and kind of got rid of a lot of that information. There used to be really, really big people. You look at these old doors and you see like 200 feet doors,
Huge.
like even looking
Yeah.
at the door behind me, that's about I think it's 8 feet or 9 feet, but 200 feet is just mind blowing to think of. You have these people with giant skulls. There's a lot of that too. There used to be a lot of other, I would say, people or humans or whatever that used to live on the realm. I think some sort of incident occurred about the 1800s. I would say 1800s, 1850s, around that time. And then pretty much just kind of everything in a series of events kind of began to get reset. But when I look at who was doing this, you see on a lot of these old world buildings, you see a lot of angels. And I thought that was always interesting. You see these people with wings and it's their angels. And if you could fly, that would really change everything. You wouldn't have to worry about your luggage and things like that. But if you could fly, you could do things very differently. And I think that there were people who were very, very advanced, but something happened. The thing is that sometimes when you get into technology, you can get crazy with it. You can start to use it for the other purpose because you
Yeah.
start going nuts. You're like, okay, I can do anything. I can wave a wand and make a tiger, and whatever else. And we can do this and have a tiger and whatever else. Then things you start experimenting and going a little crazy. So I think what might have happened was, at least this is my thoughts, there was some sort of like static field event that took place. And then a lot of places were reset with this. And like almost like the mud, that the soil went up into the air, landed back down on the ground, and then cover things. And then because it was a static field, it cooked the top surface. And then some people who were maybe underground or whatever it may be were still here. And then they kind of just took over things and started repopulating places and things like that. Because what's really weird is when you get into technology, a lot of the stuff we are being sold in 2024 already was here in the 1800s. Like this isn't even new. Me and you talking on this
Right.
screen this is not new technology. Same with the cars, same with the airplanes. You see these depictions in all of these different, cultures all across, the realm. So then you have to wonder, well, how long has this been going on for?
Yeah.
And is this just a reset after a reset after a reset? And then we're now on the top layer. And what kind of really, kind of went with my mind was I was researching into like hollow earth. And it's a really censored topic. And I thought that's really weird because, anytime they censor something, it's kind of a topic in which, you should look into. But when I started getting into that, it makes more sense to go into the earth than go up above. And maybe that relates to something of where technology came from. You get into all these societies, they understood that there were people in the earth and things like that.
Mm.
But a lot of the stuff is of the stories too, like even Native Americans are ant people coming from inside the earth up, onto the surface. So what realm are we in? What layer are we in? If you think of like even a piece of cheesecake, there's different layers to it and things like that. So what layer are we in? And then how did we appear? And when I started getting into the 1900s, you see orphan trains,
That's
you
what I
see
said. I just made a note about that. What's with all the freaking orphans? Yeah.
baby incubators, orphans,
Yes.
children, 80% child labor, which is interesting because imagine trying to build a
Wow.
castle with children, like that would never
Right.
happen. They would just be playing and messing around and whatever else. But, so with that, where are all these kids coming from? And then America is called the New World. They've removed the old world and it's become the new world. And they're exploring the new world. Christopher Columbus exploring the new world and that whole narrative. So what happened in America? Why were all these buildings destroyed here, but then all the buildings are still remaining in Europe? This is a question that people can ask too. But yeah, you see all these babies, you see baby incubators, you see all these things, and then you start to ask, where are all the kids coming from? And where are all the parents? If there's
Yeah.
all these babies appearing, shouldn't they have parents? And that's where I started to look at all this and go, this looks almost like we're living in the Truman Show. That's the best way to describe it.
Totally.
And we're taking place in this scenario. There were other scenarios in the past, like you said, but each one had a different timeline. And then now we're here today. And now, as you said, like even Jason with Archaics and everybody else, everybody's unfolding and unpacking everything. And then that's leading down a million more rabbit holes to kind of start asking questions about, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. Like this timeline doesn't even mess with this timeline. I found a book from the 1700s where they were already talking about electricity. And I thought, 1776 is when America was started, you know, allegedly, and whatever else. But then electricity at that time, that kind of is a very different timeline than what we were told at about the 1880s. You know, so what time is it? What day is it? What year is it? And where are we actually in? And these are obviously, this can drive you mad, you know, because it's all different topics and things like that. But it's just things to question because I'm telling you, everything I was taught was so boring. It was dulling. And this stuff, in my opinion, is very, it feels very part of your soul and part of your connection to understand. And I feel like that's why we're all here. We're understanding everything of the past and the present and what's to come all at the same time. It's like one timeline all merging together.
Right. And it makes sense of just discovering who you are. If it's based on complete lies, like you could throw the schooling out the window. Like seriously, every fact that we've been taught, good God, I don't know what was true in that at all, but it really helps to just, I don't know, get to know yourself more, I feel, and know, and then be better for those who come after us as well. So I have a 15-year-old son, doesn't go to school, and I'm so thankful that I don't have, doesn't have to unlearn so much of what he would have been taught by this point in the system. So it gets us, yeah, and it's fascinating and it's interesting, and I'm curious. It's like, well, if they're making this up, then what's the truth and why? It's just a natural curiosity, and I'm so surprised that so many people don't have the curiosity based on the obvious lies and obvious greed and obvious unnecessary harm and lack that is in this world. So it's just super interesting. So lead. We've never heard anything good about lead, and I was surprised to hear. Like, I know we use lead to protect us from, say, radiation, things like that. But when you start talking lead, I was like, oh God, that, yeah, I just love that. I love just having my mind changed again. So tell us about lead.
So lead is an interesting one. You know, you get into this and you're told, like you said, to stay away from the lead. You know, the lead is going to get you. You know, you should get rid of your lead pipes. You know, it's interesting because you go to the dentist, they put lead on you to protect you, you know, from the X-rays and things like that. So when we get into this whole 5G service and things like that, you think about lead could be potentially something. You know, you think about how there used to be lead paint. You
Yes.
know, they said that it was banned because allegedly children were eating it. But at the exact same time that lead paint was banned, the first cell phone rolled out in 1971, and then lead paint was banned very shortly after that. So you start to sit there and think, well, that could be a counter towards all the cell phone towers that they keep trying to put up all over the place, even the fake cactuses, you know, that they're doing here in Arizona and things like that. But, you know, you start to see this connection with that. Then you think about lead pipes. You know, you have, I mean, you still have like 100 million people with lead pipes. So if the lead was as toxic as what we were told, wouldn't all the people with lead pipes be gone? Now, they did do a thing with Flint, Michigan, and that whole thing, but that was also what they're running through the water supply
Yeah.
again. They were putting poisons through the water supply, it's corroding the pipes. And that's what I started to notice was they would put these chemicals through the water supply, either lead pipes or copper pipes, to corrode the pipes to get people onto plastic pipes. So that's another interesting one.
Mm.
Then you think of all the lead, you know, people got, they say the lead poisoning. Well, actually, a lot of people have graphite poisoning. So if you think about a lead pencil, it's actually graphite. There's no lead in it whatsoever. So when a person would take that graphite and stick it into their friend in school, they're actually putting graphite or graphene into their friend because they stuck them with the pencil, and then they would start to get like a wound. So they didn't have lead poisoning, they had graphite poisoning. And that's where I started to realize that a lot of the things that we were told with lead doesn't make a lot of sense. And all of these old world buildings that we talked about, the cathedrals, the world fairs, they all had lead pipes. Every single place had lead pipes. You go through all these pipes, they've lasted for, you know, hundreds of years or whatever the timeline is. Their pipes are still around. And you have to wonder why, if a society is so advanced, why would they use lead pipes then? You know, like if they're so advanced, why would they put something allegedly toxic with their water of all things? Because when you look at the old world and you look at the world fairs, they were all about water. Water was like the showcase of everything, fountains and water and everything. They even made like really cool canals and all this stuff related to water. So they must know something. And if we take it one step further, we talk about pipe organs. Pipe organs were made of lead. You go into all the cathedrals and they had lead pipe organs. So somebody understood sound frequency with lead. Now, if you take lead and you put it through alchemy, you can turn it to radium. You can turn it to gold. You can turn it into different materials. So this is another part in which has been left out. And you tell people to stay away from a material so that they can't acquire another material. And that's where I started to realize you put this fear into people, tell them it's going to get them and all these other things so that they don't start going into experimenting and looking at these things and going, wait a minute, you can use lead for batteries. The old electric vehicles also used lead batteries. Why aren't we using that now? The old lead batteries in the electric vehicles had 100 to 200 miles per charge. That's as much as we have today. So someone understood something with lead, and I feel like we've been just told to stay away from it. And then with social media and Google, per the usual, it's always fear, 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 and people should stay away. But like I said, experiment, see for yourself, and go from there. That's always the best way because you can understand something rather than somebody telling you something, and then kind of research it and start to ask questions about it. But with the whole rollout of all the nonsense they want in cell phone towers, you know, lead was used as a protective surface or a protective shield against this. So you can kind of see if you wanted to roll something out and you didn't want people protected, you would ban it before they had an actual ability to buy it and then say it's harmful. And just so people are aware, as much as lead paint is banned, airplanes, a lot of them, still use lead gasoline.
No, they
So
do.
they're burning that in the air right now as we speak. But allegedly, my lead paint, or at my time, the 70s, was the lead gasoline. They banned that one, but they kept it for the airplanes.
Right.
So if you don't unravel it, you start to go, oh, it's got to be bad for me. But then why are we still burning it in the air then? You know, so that's where I started to realize there's holes in the story. Story's got lots of, it's like a barrel with a lot of holes in it and the water is just leaking. You know, it's just there's lots of holes in the story, and a lot of alchemy is related to lead. You get into alchemy, which was practiced in the 1900s, it was related to lead. And that's a big one because you have the 7 sacred metals and lead is one of them.
Wow. And so you can't get lead paint anymore at all?
You can find it maybe on eBay, you know, or something like that, but it's just, yeah, I mean, there's just no producers anymore.
Right.
And that's what happens is, you know, the producers disappear because there's no point of making something. Similar to what they're trying to do with the incandescent bulbs. You know, they're trying to phase out the incandescent bulbs and switch everybody to LEDs. Well, then the makers no longer make the incandescents, and then people are forced into something else. And that's how these agendas work is it's removed from the makers, and then they're like, oh, well, I have no options. So, you know, with that one, people should stock up on incandescent bulbs as we talk about. But
you have
it's
a
the same
resource for
thing.
that, right? Sorry, you have a resource for the bulbs?
Yes, you can find it on 1000bulbs.com. I have no affiliate link. I have no nothing. It's just go to their website. That's how I do everything. Just go to the website and you can just look them up, and they have bulbs galore. Just you go buy a whole bunch, and they're like 90 cents. That's what's funny. Like they're literally so cheap. But you know, you can stock up and just get a whole bunch, and then just because you'll notice the difference of incandescent versus LED, that's for sure. And that's another rabbit hole of things that you don't need and things that you're just sold. And so people are aware the oldest light bulb that's still burning is an incandescent. It's in California, and it's been burning for 120 years.
Yes, I saw that through you. That's a crazy story. That is amazing.
So if it was dangerous, I mean, or whatever, or not energy efficient.
Or not efficient.
Funny. Yes, if it's not efficient, then why is it still burning for 120 years?
Crazy.
So you don't got money if things are lasting that long. You know, that's how I see it.
Well, there is a whole story around that, I think, right? They made them so that they wouldn't last so long, just like nylons they made so they wouldn't
Mhm.
last so long. So women have to buy nylons every second wearing rather than years at a time. Just planning that obsolescence way before. We actually bought a whole bunch of used bulbs online because you can go onto the used sites and find people that are switching their entire homes out to LED and we're just getting rid of all their bulbs. So we just stocked up on a whole bunch of bulbs that were in somebody's home that they just switched out because yeah, because
Love
people
it.
are doing that. They're doing that. Yeah. So I want to quickly talk about, I want to get to Pearl. And I know this is going so fast, but I want to talk to Pearl. But first of all, I'll also you talk about cobalt, which is interesting as well too. I want to hear what you say about cobalt glass and about that.
So this goes into the glass making of the 1920s. You have cobalt, you have manganese, and you have uranium or radium glass as well. And if you think of these materials, you think of them as things to create energy or to help assist energy. Cobalt is what they use in a lot of batteries to help assist the energy of the battery. And cobalt is also the precursor of B12. So a lot of people suffering from a B12 issue, a cobalt glass can help resolve that B12 issue because anything that you're drinking out of that is glass will have a property to it. And this is what alchemy used to do. They would take a material, infuse it into the glass, and that would allow that material or that substance to get into the body. Same with radium, which is the sun ionizing radiation. So you would get that radium into the body. And then same when you get into manganese. I had a lady reach out who she was doing manganese. She got a manganese glass. She gave it to her grandmother. Her grandmother had depression and her depression was fixed. And she's like, I can't believe it. I just drank out of a glass. Well, think about it. Anything that you're drinking out of has a property. And cobalt is a very, very highly conductive one. And when you get into the 1929 Great Depression, which was orchestrated by bankers, you begin to see all this glassware being made. And they're taking all these materials and imprinting them into the glass. And you get into all this vintage glass and you see all these different things. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to buy a couple of those, because they told me, once again, they told me they're toxic and whatever. So I'm going to drink out of it. That's basically what I decided because I'm like, it is what it is. So I bought a cobalt glass and I started drinking out of it. And I started noticing that I was like totally zen, like
Wow.
totally just focused, like just nothing could bother you. Like as if like, I mean, honestly, there'd be a whatever. The sun's coming out of the sky. It doesn't even matter, whatever. It didn't even make a difference. And I thought, this is interesting. So each glass has a different
Mm.
property, which helps to turn on a different part of the body. And when you get into glassware, like Bohemia and all the glassware that they used to make, they only drank out of certain materials. They only had infused glass. They would put their milk in this glass. They had bowls with this glass. They had spoons, cups, all of this. So then you start to think, okay, if it's toxic, why would you cook your entire dinner and drink out of it if it was as toxic as we were told?
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. You wouldn't be just making all this glassware, having soup and honey and breakfast and dinner and drinking coffee and things like that. So I started collecting a lot of glassware and I started experimenting with different glass. And I started to notice that this is another one related to, infusing glass. You think of stained glass windows. When they would color these stained glass windows, they would use cobalt, they would use copper, they would use rubies, they would use uranium, they would use all these different materials and put it into the glass so that when a person would stand in front of that glass and the sun would shine or
Mm.
the moon, it would imprint those materials or that frequency into the body, into the blood and the water of the body.
That makes
So this
and
is a
then
very
and then you
advanced.
combine yes, and you combine the work of Veda Austin with this and the water component, right?
Yes.
And how
Yes.
that's huge. Oh, sorry.
Yes. So then you're taking it a step further with Veda Austin's work in imprinting water, and anything in which water is the thought that is in your mind is imprinted into the water. And then anything of material wise around you also imprints the water.
Imprints.
So think
Totally.
about your whole body as one big ball of water when they're telling us we're running out of it, which is funny, but one big ball of water that's taking on everything of the ether that's all around us. and everything of the material is imprinting on the water. So, you know, when you're drinking out of something, not only is your intention imprinting on the water, but the material of the drink or the glassware is also imprinting on the food and the water.
Yeah.
And so as I started going down this, I thought this is wild. This makes perfect sense because this is how the body works. Everything is, you know, there's a reaction that takes place, you know, no matter what you do, whether you eat, you drink, you sleep, it's a reaction. And so same thing with drinking out of certain things. And the cobalt thing was fascinating. Then I got into uranium, you know, then I got into manganese. Then what was really cool was with uranium, you could take a UV flashlight, put it in front of the glass, and it would glow in the dark. So then I thought, okay, this is energy. This is what lightning bugs do. You know, lightning bugs are producing energy as they're glowing, flying all over the place. So think about the glow that you're drinking. And if you think of like the whole, you know, the Simpsons and all of the stuff they do in their the beginning of it, you know, Homer is afraid to touch the uranium and the plutonium, and he's like holding the thing like that. That's putting the fear into your mind. But then you go on the other side, you look up Galen Winsor, and you look at him drinking plutonium and going, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. So that's why I say there's like a fear put on this side. But when you look at reality, Galen Winsor said they don't want people learning about this because they could tap into the energy principle and not pay for things. So these are all little tangents. It's a very high charged moon, you know, yesterday and everything else. So we're all like, you know, jacked up.
I had a day yesterday too. I hung up on 2 people yesterday.
It's the lunatics. They're out there, you know. So that's the thing. It's the charged up energy and everything. So you know, like I said, this is a lot to wrap into the mind, all different things. But just kind of, you know, dissect it little by little and kind of think about it, and then kind of think of what your grandparents did, or maybe your parents did, and think about what they used to eat out of, what they used to eat with, and then they used to put linens on the table, you know, which emit light frequency before they would eat. You know, they would bring out the fine silverware and all of these different beautiful glasses. There's much more intended or has an intention with it than just putting a cup on the table and being like, I drank out of that.
Right. So much. And you can see every piece has a purpose to the experience, to the expression, to the what you get inside of you. It's crazy. And we've lost it all. We've lost it all. Okay. Oh, we gotta go. Let's talk about pearl powder. Okay, I would wanted to talk about, can you talk 2 minutes about primary water, and then we'll talk pearl, and then we'll be done. Because that's the thing, people, there's so many things and I love them all. And that's why I love Matt, because Matt kind of covers all the stuff. So one thing that this is the next agenda, right, is the water thing. That we've been told by the WEF that, you know, everybody understands water. A kid understands if he doesn't drink water after a soccer game, he's going to be thirsty, and it's a problem. We've had water restrictions in this city, and they're coming back again in another week. So primary water, go, because people think there's a water cycle and we're running out of water, and we have to conserve water at our own demise, really. And I wasn't allowed to properly water my garden this summer, and we didn't have rain. So water, primary water, and then pearl, and then we're good.
Of course. So yeah, we have a lot to talk about. Obviously, we can go to a lot of topics and things like that. But with the water, you know, we're never running out of water. This is just a myth. This is just to usher in taxes, and this is just to usher in restrictions, just like you mentioned, so that you can't grow food. That's how you control people. You tell them they're running out of water so that you can control the food supply. Once you control the food supply, you then control the people. That's just as simply put as it is. But when you get into running out of water, people can look into the book New Water for a Thirsty World. This was a book that debunked all of the water situation and how we're never running out. There's also a website called primarywaterinstitute.org, and this was ran by Paul Power, who would drill primary water wells. These are wells which never run out of water. And he would actually go to Africa, the Middle East, Southern America, California, which is a big one, which is funny. But he would go to these places and he would drill these wells, and they would never run out of water. There is water that's coming up from inside the earth all the time. This is why people's basements flood. You know, they get rain and they're like, oh, my basement's flooding. The water's coming up from inside the earth while the rain is pouring from the sky. So you have water moving at both directions, so you experience flooding. But it was interesting because in the 1950s, Lake Elsinore ran dry, and they were saying, we're running out. So we need to start building pipelines. And we're going to build these pipelines, which is always the story, and take the water from somewhere else. And they tried building these pipelines, and the actual pipelines went dry. So there was a dowser who came out, and dowsing goes back into finding water, finding gold, silver. They would come out with a hazel stick where they'd find copper and brass, and they'd come out there and they'd find water. So they had a dowser come out, and he goes, if you drill right here, I'll tell you right here, this is where the water is to refill Lake Elsinore. So what happened was the geologist said, this is woo-woo. We don't do any of that woo-woo stuff here. We build pipes. And he goes, just trust me, like, just do it. So they said, nope. So they tried building another pipeline, went dry again. And he goes, just drill right here. You'll have water. They drill at whatever depth it was. They find water. They refill Lake Elsinore. They never give him credit for finding the water. And Lake Elsinore has been filled ever since. And this is what, when you look at cathedrals, when you look at castles, when you look at all these things, they always have these wells. You always see these wells. They're always inside, and they're deep. You know, they're getting water from, you know, however deep they are, they're getting water. They always have water. Even these castles on mountains, you're like, how did they get the water up there? And whatever.
Right.
They're pulling water from the earth. And this is the myth. We look up at the sky and we go, oh my gosh, it's not raining. And then we look at the lakes, which only are about 30 to 40% full. And we say, oh my gosh, we're running out of surface water. We're running out of rainwater. We don't have any water. But in reality, there's water underneath our feet all the time. And this is what primary water was. And most people don't know that when they invaded Libya and the whole thing with Gaddafi, the first thing that they took out was the pipeline he was creating to give all the water to the Middle East and Africa. He said everybody should eat organic, not have pesticides, and have an abundance of water. And the first thing that they took out was the pipeline, because he understood that there was all this water underneath us. And he was growing organic, beautiful food in the middle of the desert. He's like, nobody needs to starve. You guys can all have food. Wow. So when you look at all of this and you look at restrictions and you look at taxes and all the nonsense, these Muppets, because that's what they are, who are trying to put these rules in place, they know these things. Like the book, New Water for a Thirsty World, was part of California. Primary water was also drilled in California. Like the state knows that there's unlimited water, but then they play a game and say, well, we need taxes on you and you're using too much. And then they take the water and they pour it in the ocean to save the fish. So you got to sit there and go, wait a minute, none of this makes sense. So people can look into dowsing, people can look into primarywaterinstitute.org, New Water for a Thirsty World, and just do some reading. Because once you start connecting some dots, you once again see, wait a minute, maybe if I just drill a well with, you know, in the right spot, I can hit a water vein and I'll have water forever. And that's what they don't want people to know. Because if people know that, they have free water.
Free,
and
good,
then,
healthy, structured water.
That's what I was just going to say.
Oh.
Healthy, no pesticides, no fluoride, no arsenic, no heavy metals, and they have beautiful water to heal and hydrate. Yeah. That's the other thing. They want people crowded in cities and all of this, so they're on the public water supply with the fluorides and the arsenics and all this garbage that they run through it. This gives people clean water, and they don't have a meter on it. So you can't tell somebody not to use it. You know, once they put the little meter, now they're like, oh, you've been using too much water. Yeah. Even though they're using, and this is a funny thing, how much water do you think they're using for AI? Lots. Because they have to keep those databases and those centers cool. They can't get them, they can't overheat. So they have to use water for that. And then when I got into dowsing, the biggest people who use dowsers, this is another one, the biggest people who use dowsers are big oil, big electric, and big pharma. Wow. There's always water in those pills. Where are they getting the water from? The unlimited water. And then they de-ionize it, so they take the ionization out of it and make it toxic. So this is all these, water is a one, like I said, I could talk about it for hours,
Huge one.
but it's just
Yeah.
a very fascinating one. And it just is an easy one to debunk like all the rest. But if we don't know the truth on it, we just believe that, well, water was put on the stock market in 2022 and we're running out at the same
Wow.
time, and
Yeah.
water restrictions are coming at the exact same time. Then we have to ask questions and go, maybe something's off on that. And
Totally.
that's kind of how it started with me.
Totally. Yeah, it's so obvious. I can see it unfolding right now. You refer to so many books and people and things. Do you have a resource list that people can look to find all this? Like, I'm going to write it all down. I'll put it in the notes, but do you have a list or anywhere on your site?
I don't have a full list because there's a lot of books. And I just kind of so what I do is if I put anything up on YouTube or Rumble or Odyssey, anywhere, wherever it is, in the
Okay.
caption, I'll put the books.
Okay.
So if someone just goes to our page and you just
Okay.
type in water, you'll get all the books. We even have a blog on this actually. We have a blog about primary water on our page, and it's got
Okay.
PDFs on there, and people
Okay.
can find these books on
Okay.
that page as well, which I'll get the link sent to you as well, so you can have that. But that's got the PDFs, and they can just download the book. Because if you want to laugh, the new Water for a Thirsty World book is about $5,000 or $10,000 now.
No way. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. Isn't that great? And it's so important to get these books now before they're absolutely wiped, right? Before they're
Yes.
gone.
Yes.
So we need
And
that paper.
that's the next intention of what they're
Right.
trying to do. Remove the information, make it really expensive, so you can't learn it. So that's why I'm really big on, if people want to learn, collect books and get
Totally.
books before the 1920s, because they show just a completely different story than everything we were told.
Right. Right. So interesting. So, okay. So your site. So guys, if you want to get anything from Cultivate Elevate, Sasha 10 for 10% off. And you have some, I can see that they're very carefully curated products. So let's just talk about one of them, because I've worked with the Tonic Curd company for quite a few years now as well. And I've been on this path for a long time. And we're just getting pearl as well. So pearl powder, you've talked a lot about pearl powder from teeth to eyes and vision. So how does people like pearl, like, first of all, pearls, are they freshwater pearls? Are they natural pearls? Are they cultivated pearls? And what is it about pearls and what's the history on pearls? And then we'll wrap up.
So pearl powder is magical, and I actually went down this rabbit hole because I was learning about a professional who was using pearl powder with her patients, and they had cataracts. And she had 100 patients who had cataracts. She started giving them pearl powder and making them put pearl powder around the eyes and use it with the eyes, and then eating it as well. And within 2 months, 70% of her patients, the cataracts were resolved and dissolved.
Wow.
And I sat there and thought, wait a minute. I've never heard of that. I've never heard your eyesight gets better. I've always gone to the professional and they give me thicker and thicker glasses until I can't even see out of them. And you got bottles on your eyes and things like that. And so I sat there and thought, if this is true, that means your eyesight can regenerate. That
Totally.
means that it's not a degenerating process. It actually means it can regenerate. So when I read that, I thought, all right, then I got to see if this is actually true. So I started using pearl powder, started getting into it. Pearl powder is air compressed pearls from freshwater pearls. So that's what it is. And what you're doing is you're consuming a little bit of pearl powder, and it's just been broken down with air compression. And you're bringing in magnesium, you're bringing in selenium, you're bringing in the ability to boost glutathione levels, all the different amino acids, all these different micronutrients, and all these beautiful minerals in which we're missing. And it also contains 2% structured water. So when we just talked about water, we're losing the structure of our water. And our eyes, they require structured water. That's what they are. There's a structured surface. And then they also require 25% nutrition. And if you think about it, we're not feeding our eyes. We're being bombarded with blue light and frequencies and Wi-Fi and all this garbage that they try to sell people. But that's actually messing with the eyes. And Pearl helps to help feed the eyes. And it's connected to the spleen pathway. This is what I kind of found really fascinating. It's connected to the spleen. Nobody talks about the spleen because the spleen is part of the cooling pathway. We have all this heat. We're always heat, electricity, heat, everything, blah, blah, blah. But we don't have anything to cool things down and assist that pathway. The spleen is connected up to the eyes. That whole pathway runs right down that. So when you're consuming pearl powder or you're utilizing pearl powder, you're helping to feed the meridian pathways of the eyes connected into the tonsils and then connected down to the spleen.
The liver? Are the eyes?
It's a little bit of the connection to the liver because it does boost glutathione, but
Yeah.
mostly primarily it starts with the spleen.
Okay.
That's where the chi energy comes from when you get into the chi and the
Yeah.
orgone and things like that. But the pearl connects to the spleen. And then the pearl also connects to the moon energy, which is what we're all
Mm.
hooked up to. You know, that's why we're all feeling all energized today and things like that. But that moon energy and the water, when you think of water, you think of your body. And it's interesting too, because if you take pearl and, for example, you put it in a cup, you'll see that it almost kind of like floats a little bit. And that's the monatomic. It's like Ormus. It's just floating because it's defying the gravity thing that we've been taught about and things like that. So if you think about it, you know, when you're going to consume something like that, it's in this floating state. So if you think about the flow of your body, it's connected with that as well. But when I got into pearl, I was just mind blown, and that's why we have 3 versions of it now. We
Oh,
have a
you
big pearl,
do?
capsules, and a smaller pearl. Because as we started doing things with pearl, and we started getting all this feedback and people's eyesight healing and sleeping better and their skin, like flawless skin and things like that, you know, I started realizing, wow, we're just missing some minerals. Like it's hard to determine. And like you said, all of our products I've picked on for a certain reason, you know,
Yeah.
rather than just having a whole plethora of 8,000
Right.
products and things like that. Each thing is addressing the meridian pathway and the connective tissues to address a pathway. And I've realized when we start understanding pathways and we understand color therapy and spectrums and these things, we can heal like this. But if we don't pay attention to that and we just, you know, mindlessly take things like we were talking about in the beginning of this, then we can't help heal things. And there's a great book, Light is Medicine by Jacob Liverman. There's also Health and Light by Dr. John Ott. And there's the work of Edwin Babbitt. And all 3 of those people all go into light spectrums and healing. And when you think about color, when you think about food, when you think about everything we've talked about today, it's all light. So that's all we're doing. And pearl is just completely white and has a neutral taste. And then you think of the color spectrum that you're getting in, which white is the most reflective, and it relates back to linen, which is also on that white spectrum. So it's fascinating. Like each thing has its purpose, and each thing has its you know, the color spectrum that serves a different part of the body that it's trying to assist. So it's a fun one.
Would you say pearl would be also good for teeth and for bones, like the deposits of the minerals in the body?
Definitely. So, you know, the thing is with a lot of people taking calcium supplements is they're synthetic. You know, this is everything is synthesized. You have vitamins and all these things which are all synthetic, and the body cannot absorb synthetic things. It's very challenging. So, when it comes to feeding the teeth, feeding the bones, pearl can help feed the bones, feed the teeth. You can also make toothpaste out of it. You know, I take a little bit of coconut oil, a little bit of pearl powder, and usually 1 drop of peppermint, and that's how I brush my teeth. And I've been doing that since we launched it because I thought, why do I got to put fluoride in my mouth? That makes no sense. It
No.
eats holes in concrete. So, like, that doesn't make any sense. And then, number 2, a lot of the toothpaste contain citric acid. Citric acid has been shown to destroy the enamel of your teeth. So, that doesn't make any sense either. So, if we think about pearly whites and that whole thing, how people would put pearls in their mouth when they lost a tooth, they would have these pearly whites. Then we can see the connection between our teeth, our bones, our eyes, everything. You know, everything that's connected with just a pearl. And when you look at mother pearl, you think of all the life force of the realm. But it helps on many things. You can even put it with skin. You can put a little castor oil on your skin with pearl. You can do that. You
Yeah,
know, you
talk
can.
about that because I know you talk a lot about people in your testimonials with pearl powder with castor oil around the eyes because a lot of people think they can regenerate other things, but they don't think about their eyes and they just get those thicker and thicker prescriptions. So, what are some of the testimonials that you've heard with people with pearl powder and castor oil around the eyes?
So we've had a lot of people with floaters and the floaters going away. And they would just take castor oil and pearl powder and they put it around their eyelids. And after about 10, 15 minutes, usually they maybe wash it off or just let it soak in. You know, it doesn't really make a difference. And then they would notice that the floaters are gone. And I've started to realize that the floaters are just showing you damage. You know, you just have damage in that area. And that castor is helping to get the pearl deeper into the eyes and deeper into the body. But also, there's always a flip side. It's also helping to pull toxins out. You know, a lot of times you have toxins in the eyes and they're all gathered. This is why people are getting red or itchy eyes. Maybe they're getting pressure, things like that. That's because there's a toxic buildup or inflammation of that area. So pearl and castor can help resolve that. But castor goes back. You go to castor oil packs, castor enemas, and the whole liver and everything connected to the liver and castor oil. So we're using things of nature, which, like you said, come without side effects and have been tested for thousands of years, instead of some new thing that comes out, which is by a company which is just trying to poison us and then lead to something else. But you can use a little pearl and castor around the eyes, very healing. And then also too, if you want to do for any skincare, you can do shea butter, mango butter, you could do tallow, you could do duck fat, you can do a little bit of, and then a little bit of pearl powder, mix that together and place that on the skin. You can do that as well. But there's all these different natural remedies. Feel out what goes best with your skin, because some people are different. Like I can put on like a butter, and I just don't like how it feels. I can feel it instantaneously. But I can put on something else, maybe like jojoba or hoba, however you say it, and you put that on, it feels very silky. So everybody is very different, but just see how you feel. But there's so many things. The studies on pearl are one of the few that have human studies. You look at a lot of things and you see all the studies on things, and there's not a lot of human studies. There's always like, whatever study they came up with and whatever. But there's a lot of human studies with pearl, and it goes back to, the dawn of time when they were giving people who are just about to have a baby pearl powder. So you start to see the connection of water and the womb, and you start to think of, the pearl and the moon and the water. Someone kind of knows.
And how much does somebody consume in a day?
So usually you do about a half a teaspoon a day, or you could do 1 to 3 capsules if you're doing the capsules, because the capsules are it's more pure, rather than like, obviously when you scoop, sometimes you scoop too little or you scoop too much and whatever else. Right. But usually about a half a teaspoon or 1 to 3 capsules, depending on the person. And the fun part is you can just experiment, use how much you feel and see what works with you. I've taken a lot of pearl and then I'm real calm and real zen. And then sometimes I just take a little bit of pearl when I just want to just be focused, but not as calm or zen. But I'll do it before bed. I just kind of mix and match and see how I feel. What works best with my regimen. Right. And that's the cool thing, is when you get into nature, you start to see, okay, these different times I can use things, and this works really well for me. And then maybe this doesn't work really well at that time. So I kind of just go with what my body feels.
Totally. Very cool. Very cool. So you guys, some really great products on there, and you can tell there's been care taken in the choosing of that for somebody who's been using these types of things for decades now. I can, the medicinal mushrooms, the shilajit, which we didn't talk about, but that's another great topic. The pearl, they're all functional, and you just add them into your food. It's not like you have to take a million different things. It's like, I love upgrading my food with these things, or having a warm cup of shilajit in the morning. I know you have the capsules as well, it's tablets or whatever, but anyway, so Sasha 10 for 10% off. So Matt, tell us best ways for people to find you.
So you can find us on cultivateelevate.com. We have a whole bunch of blogs. If you type in water into the search, you'll get all those blogs and all the videos we just talked about for primary water, because I know that's a hot topic. And then we have all our products on there. We have electroculture on there. And then if you want more information, we have a YouTube, a Rumble, and an Odyssey. It's all on Cultivate Elevate. That's all long format videos. This will go up on there as well too. And then we also have a Telegram, which is just a beautiful community of people just chiming in and positive energy, because we got enough chaos. I don't need more chaos. Beautiful positive energy in Telegram. And then also I'm on Twitter and Instagram. The only one that gets censored the most is the Instagram. So if you try to search it, you're going to have to type in the whole name, because they just block Cultivate Elevate, and you'll get a little badge and things like that. But I try to put the information everywhere so that people have access to this, because all of these topics we've talked about today, this is all censored information. Like, it's sad, because it's information that helps heal people and give people at least some sort of healthy direction. And when I had my health ailments back in the day, I would go to a professional and they would just tell me it's genetics and I'm getting older.
Right.
And it's funny because I was 25 at the time, 26, and I'm like, I've barely been here. Like, I haven't been here that long, but sure, we'll say that. And then I started to realize that it was my lifestyle habits which were causing my issues. And as I started to change those things, I started realizing, wow, that's all it took. And now, in light of that time versus now, it's the same thing. And we've had a lot of people do the same, like yourself, where just little changes and little baby steps leads to a happier and healthier life. So you can find us on Cultivate Elevate, a ton of information on there. But yeah, I just try to put it everywhere because we live in the Truman Show. So that's why.
I totally get that. Like when you think of the Truman Show and he sails off and he hits the side, it's like, oh my God, this is it. Yeah, I know. Okay, well, you hold on, but you guys, okay, for some of you, this might be a bit of a mind bender. These are topics that I am familiar with and fascinated by, but really, it's about owning your life and taking responsibility and really looking to the people and the purveyors of information who are risking censorship. They're risking even more dangerous things happening to them, and they're not benefiting. Sure, Matt's selling amazing products, but he's also telling about amazing products that you can find elsewhere as well, right? So we have to look at the messengers and their intention, but it's all fascinating stuff. And I love just the idea of stretching the mind and learning about it. And just pick one thing and just go to Pearl's tangible, Pearl's available, and just do that if everything else is a little too much. So I hope you like this interview. Please share it with your friends and family. I get censored a lot. Who knows where this will get pulled from, but it's just me. So I'm trying to build my presence as well, but it's a lot of work. But anyways, please share. I hope you enjoy this. I know I did, Matt. I super appreciate your time today because this is fun stuff. And this just keeps life more interesting and light, I find as well, because it can get really heavy if you just focus on the evildoers of the world. But rather than know that that's there, turn that off and go to what empowers you, right? And keeps you healthy and supports you, and find the people that are doing the same, because your life will change absolutely on all levels if you do so. So thanks again. And until next time, be well, happy.